Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. This is Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and this episode is actually about Uranus. Although it's no longer Jupiter Day, this is already Moon Night and Moon Hour with the midheaven on the Moon when the Moon is in Capricorn, and so it's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in Pisces, as we know, 15 degrees Pisces now. And ascendant is in Aries, 13 degrees Aries, with Mars in Gemini. Um, Mars in Gemini in the fourth. And so I find it fascinating that this episode I actually pressed record to talk about Uranus and its connection to civil wars, about particularly slavery and labor rights in Gemini. And I find it very fascinating, this the moon relation. So I guess we'll see. Okay. And to the topic of this episode. Okay, to the topic of this episode. Well, I guess the moon is in the sign that rules archaic patriarchal notions of depth of slavery, and moon rules housing. And let's talk about Uranus. Okay, Uranus is right now stationing to go retrograde, or already retrograde and better per se. And we know Uranus is the planet of revolutions, of independence, okay, striking independence, but also the rebel that becomes a tyrant. And yet there is something to Uranus that has to do with labor rights, and liberation. So liberation is always, as a lawyer who taught me screenwriting, um, said very well, all classic plots. Okay, if you talk about a classic movie and not let's say avant-garde or something like that, then all classic, 7-act plots are stories of going from slavery to liberty. And Uranus is such story. That's why when you have Uranus transits or Uranus connections, it can feel like a movie, like you're living in a movie. And there's twists and turns of the plot. And the story of going from slavery to liberation is very Uranian as well. Okay, or it's a segment of the story of Uranus. And Uranus in Gemini, Gemini is a sign of duality around humans. Okay, if we have two fishes for Pisces, if we have the duality of the scales, okay, weighting one against the other in Libra, the duality of Gemini is to people. So anything coming to Gemini is exploring the themes of these dualities. When the planet of revolt comes to Gemini, of course, it's going to be civil conflict or civil war. However, the eureka I wasn't expecting is that this one is absolutely going to be about slavery. And as I look to the essence of Uranus, and I think about this line about storytelling, okay, classical storytelling, which is also mythical storytelling, of my lawyer teacher that taught me screenwriting years ago. I go back, which is funny because when I was a kid, I said, well, everybody wants to be an actress, I'll study to be a lawyer. And then I realized I can't deal with, like, I was afraid of organized crime. Now I see that the judges are way more corrupt. But but when I was studying filmmaking, it was a lawyer that was teaching me screenwriting. And that I just find it, I just think about this now. So um the story of going from slavery to freedom is what Uranus brings to every sign it's at. Okay, if we think about religion, I have Uranus in Sag, and that is religion, philosophy, and indeed I'm possibilionist. Um, and an astrologer as well. And then when it went through Capricorn, okay, I was learning about all the theories of, Marxism and capitalism. But it wasn't like I was learning about them. I was just coming at 12 years old to my mom, hey, wouldn't it be lovely if people would just, like, everybody would share things so that all people can have something. Would you can contribute what you can. And she looks at me and gives me that look, and, like, that's communism. And I didn't understand what did I do wrong until I would learn about communism and how that went wrong. And then I would learn about capitalism. It was like, oh, that must be so great. Well, that ended up being corporatism. Um, and that kind of was Uranus in the 11th house, okay, going from basically this slavery notions or enslavement to work to liberation from the value of work per se, as that was not yielding. Okay, and I became very sick to the point of suicidal, trying to go by the ideal of career, of work, and so on, to the very extremes of that. Which then, of course, will have Uranus in Aquarius, and the story of liberation through technology, liberation through science, or liberation from scientific dogma. Okay? So that is finding liberation in radical acceptance of the self. Okay, and there's always a scientific flavor to it. So it would either be, yes, my Pisces moon, blah, 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 like we astrologers do. But it can also be a DSM type of, okay, or a neurodivergence type of, that kind of place where you're liberated through a certain dogma. And then you have to liberate yourself from the dogma itself. Okay? And then Uranus into Pisces, where perhaps again we see liberation around notion of sacrifices, of going from sacrifices, from totally blending in, or radical acceptance of being the type of person who's like a chameleon or totally blends in, like a radical acceptance of the nature of the Piscean, and so on and so forth. All of that had to do with labor, work, be an entrepreneur, or which type of paradigm, okay, you have. And of course with Taurus, it's around the issue of value and exploring those notions again. Gemini, very simply put, is a conflict of liberations. And if I go back to a segment where I was in academia, and one of my teachers was a professor, I think, yes, by now professor, then she said, I am a professor, I teach you, but in order to leave, the kids and leave, and the dog and the husband, and come to teach you, another woman has to go and clean my house. So there's a notion of enslavement in this woman's liberation. You could say, okay, she provides jobs, but hey, she was paying attention to the fact that another woman is basically enslaved and decapitated in her ability to liberate herself through means of studies, career, and so on and so forth. So that she can leave the kids, leave the dog, leave the husband, and go and pursue her own freedom. And so in Sagittarius, there's this philosophical notion, okay? But then there is in Gemini the very praxis of, in order for, let's say, Americans to liberate themselves and own farms and own land and make this land fertile as capitalism requires. Okay, this land is yours because we make it fertile. They had to enslave people. And, you know, slavery is not something that comes with consent, okay? So they had to do, to perform democide, okay? So, which is the worst type of introduction to the land, because when you're new on the land, you basically you cater to the land, and then you grow with the land. Okay, this land provides for a certain contract where you tend to the land with the best of your ability, and this love is supportive, and this love yields, which Americans were not at all estranged to. And with the Industrial Revolution, the notion of enslaving the land, which affected our agriculture, but also the way we contacted the land, we initiated contact with the land, has had its implications, and still does. In Gemini, we absolutely deal with those themes, where one's liberation enslaves. And so the question of slavery becomes relevant again, because people have gotten used to the notion of slavery. Okay, people gotten used to publish ads that say work in return for housing. That's slavery. Okay, that's slavery. It's not slavery where you have a house, your parents have a house, you will have a house that is your own, you have your own acres, your own land, and you're just going to volunteer in a farm, and you're gonna volunteer, you're gonna need to live somewhere, and then you live somewhere, but you learn also a skill that's very important, and then, you know, kind of like no money changes hands, but you go back with that skill and you go back to your own farm. That's not necessarily slavery, because it's between equals. But when the volunteer does not have any prospect of being landowner, this is slavery. They will not inherit the land, okay? And this is already slavery. We go out and about when we're in we're doing other things, okay? If in Sagittarius, we're doing the liberation from philosophical dogma, in Aquarius from scientific dogma, in Capricorn from debt, okay? From the type of responsibilities that we see are not competent with the health of the nervous system. In Pisces, from archaic notions of sacrifice, but also rediscovering sacrifice where it's actually fruitful, it was actually happening. In Aries, so radical acceptance of the self, okay, celebration of the self, the I am, And then in Taurus, it's a liberation in our connection with the land, with value system. Okay, if I work the land and I have an Uranus as a technology, and we are at the half moon right now, so I tend to the half moon in my yard to make it easier for something to grow there. I make it easier for me. I honor the land, and then I can celebrate the agriculture with the moon rather than work like a slave in industrialized society. And then agriculture becomes something that does not enslave me, but connects, and is connection of celebration. Okay, that's a part of my Uranus Taurus that began with, how will I ever, to, well, there is this plot of land that nobody uses in this rented apartment, and yeah, okay, let's do something. um and then it just happened the way Uranus is. Okay, and so Uranus Gemini is really about people, but conflicts between people. And Gemini and Uranus brings in the notion of labor, not from a philosophical point of view, but applied. And so those cases, those Sagittarian cases where our philosophy of liberation in praxis enslaved come to mind when we are doing Uranus and Gemini. And then there would be the people who are like, yes, I have slaves. I own my entire estate to having slaves. They're doing work that I alone could not do. Will they inherit the land? No. So and then there would be the other type of people, but we must also tie in to the fact that slavery was never actually truly abolished. It was just relocated. So what happened eventually is that people moved to the cities because they couldn't make the land prosperous if they worked industrially. Okay, which is why Uranus goes to Taurus first. If you work industrially, you can't make the land prosperous. And then people move to the city, and then we have industrialized agriculture, which basically is slavery. And that goes into your food. And that tends to fertility. The first people that notice the issues with food in the United States, that when they used to go to Europe, now it changed in Europe, but when they used to go to Europe, I would hear American women saying, my menstruation became regular again. And I was shocked because they had no access to food in the most prosperous, abundant empire, basically, of United States. It's changing in Europe now. And people need to be on the money, but to be on the money, you need to tend to expandable children, which I talk about on and on in this channel. So yes, Uranus will be civil war, not just civil war, but it will be civil war about slavery. Very simply put, labor rights, it's true, but Uranus is always labor rights. In every sign that it touches, there is a labor rights issue. It touches on the process of creating liberation, whether it's scientific, whether it's of the identity, because if, let's say, Uranus in Aries, okay, so The I am entices the vocation. I am a writer. Okay, it means that that needs to be expressed wherever I am, and that is sovereign. That's not okay. It's Aries, it's sovereign. My revolution is sovereign. That's why we would have the Me Too with Uranus Aries squares Pluto in Aries, because there was something that allowed a little bit more sovereignty in the revolution. My revolution is mine. It's not yours. It's not the Jaush. It's not Kim Jong-un. It's not this person. And people will really need to remember that during the B6 because you have to tap and make sure that my revolution is mine. You try to tap into my revolution, you try to dance with my revolution, you try to this, you try to that. It's all very cool. You can be very creative through that. Essentially, my revolution is my revolution. Okay, you can't dictate me how to rebel. Okay. At the same time, Uranus's liberation and around sexual energy can be associated with sexual boundary violation, in as much as liberation from being in a situation of sexual boundary violation. Okay, it rules both. So the countries that are going to have that is well, the very first that I see is naturally we all know United States. Okay, we all know United States. When clock strikes 12 and Uranus enters Gemini, United States have some sort of labor related revolution. Okay, labor related civil war. When clock strikes 12, we're gonna also have this time, for the first time in this country's history, the Uranus return for Israel. It will happen later, so Uranus, I think, is later in Gemini. But it's a decade of a civil war about liberation from slavery in the state of Israel. Now, Israel is very interesting state because, first of all, its Gemini house is in the 9th, so the whole world's gonna, like, who's gonna know? Who's gonna know? The whole world's gonna know. Okay, Israel cannot hide its PowerPoint, which is this Mercury on Aldebaran, for the good, the bad, and evil, the child kidnapping, the castration of women, the mass killings, okay, the connection to Rothschild and Rockefeller. I think more Rothschild than Rockefeller, but both basically. It cannot hide any the association with Zionism, which pertains to all kinds of dogma, including the lean Jew and all types of philosophies that were prevalent in Europe around the time where both Zionism was beginning to form as a modern movement, and fascism, Nazism, and also, so these were feeding off of each other. It's just the history of the streams in Zionism. Like, not all Zionism is the same, and not Zionism is not the same as being Israeli and the same as being Jew or stuff like that. Those are all distinct things. But when it comes to the money, it comes from Zionism, which pertains to stuff that is absolutely antithetical to Judaism in many cases, both in the good and the bad. Okay, so the good is the secularism for some, but when it's not secular, we also have, okay, the association with satanic ritual abuses we have with the Satanic Church and with Muslim Brotherhood of Satan. So those things are kind of like, they're on the table. They better be on the table, because you won't be able, like Israel will not be able to swipe it under the rug. Right now we have Uranus on Israel's sun. Still everybody knows it's in the 8th house. But when it comes to Gemini, it is an international level of recognition. It's the 9th house of Israel. So it won't be able to swipe things under the rug. And boy, there are things, okay? It's the first time for this nation to go through Uranus in Gemini, and it's quite public a place. For United States, Gemini is the 7th house. So we've already seen that. There are astrologers that know about this way more than me, and have gone through very fascinating, episodes about kind of like the history of United States and the civil wars, and every time Uranus is in Gemini, what happens. So Israel is going to go through that for the first time, but it's not going to be in the 7th house, it's going to be in the 9th house. 9th house is also a house of God, okay, of religion. And so everything that Israel could swipe under the rug and underneath, well, it's anti-Semitic, to criticize either Zionism, Jews, Israel, the policies of Israel, all of that, won't be able to do that anymore. Not internally, but for Israel it's going to be even more significant because it's also going to be international. And Sedna entering into Gemini was international. Israel felt alone, betrayed by the entire world, exactly where it was exactly where they wanted us to be. Exactly where they wanted us to be, because that preserves the myth of the war for existence and the harvesting on the trauma of the war for existence. And this is a part of a satanic ritual abuse to perpetuate upbringing traumas. And that pertains to the nation state. If you think this is only Israel, you're completely wrong. Okay? United States is not just going over these phases, there is going again and again because of nothing. It was founded by satanic ritual abuse and it is being perpetuated. And when I talk about the moon cults, not worshipping the moon, but the inversion of worshipping the moon, which is basically harvesting energy of the moon to manifest trauma again and again in people. And I'm survivor of a psychologist that was a part of that. It's horrid, and I'm saying it's like that person was horrid. This practice is horrid because obviously that person was a victim of this perpetual trauma type of dynamic. A free man needs not to oppress another. It means that they don't even feel the need to oppress another. And that's definitely not Masonic, what Masonic enlightenment sozusagen is about. It's not that type of freedom. But they look at is freedom from samsara, so to not to ever come back here again because all of them were tortured. And then they think, if I be both the best of the best and the worst of the worst in the same incarnation, I will not have to come back here again. Let me tell you something. You might. So, and this is and this is something that is kind of important to keep in mind as we are approaching, okay, especially with the bisextile, then we are approaching that with Neptune, with Pluto. There definitely are going to be attempts to control for the revolution and to make a myth of the revolution. And so that those will be, and yet the sovereignty of the revolution and the sovereignty of the dream. Okay, um, one of the things that I like in the invocation for the Tema Mundi as created by Caitlin Koppak was the mentioning of I am the dreamer, this is my dream. I think it's going to be very relevant for Neptune in Aries, because Neptune is the dream, starting off with Saturn conjunction, okay? But the I am the dreamer, this is my dream, is taking sovereignty over the dream, okay? I think this testimony needs to be informed of satanic ritual abuse, which I'm working on doing. Like, yeah, if you want to like cheerleading, you're using the Tema Mundi to abolish satanic ritual abuse, yes. So that's an effort before, okay, that nobody that I know openly done that before, which immediately tells me that many people that I don't know done that, and I'm just one of that lineage. And would be excited to meet more of that lineage. So this is important because this is going to be a context for this discussion and this story, this dream, this plot movie of liberation, kind of coming into freedom. With the Neptune in Aries, it's directly going to be I am safe, I am free, and I'm sovereign, and so on. With Uranus, there's a process here, because the process of releasing the junctures of energy, and this is releasing from satanic ritual abuse. The potential is there. Okay, the door is open. The door is open, and so civil war in Israel might not be so local. Okay, simply because Gemini is in the 9th house. For United States, again, it's 7th house, and when United States fights with a partner, we know it tends to be a world war. So it's kind of like one of these. It's kind of like these partners that don't know, that don't fight in the. Okay, they don't keep their fights. To themselves. Is the kind of like couple that fights openly in front of everybody. So that's United States. But for Israel, it's going to be international. I think that the concern of the world that Israel will enslave people, try to enslave people, is very understood when we look at Gemini being the 9th house, and Uranus, the planet of liberation from slavery, being in the about to enter the 9th house of the state of Israel. So we have less of a discussion about United States enslaving the world, because it keeps saying we come to liberate you as Masons do. But the rights are gaslighting their people, and most people are born into that. And so it is better understood why people have this fear that Israel is going to try to enslave the world in that sense. In the background, we have, and it's interesting, as Mars in Cancer, we have kind of the aspiration to become intergalactic. And with Pluto, Aquarius, and Sedna in Gemini, it's very likely real. And we have to strip ourselves off of the notions. Okay, so right now there was a lot of talks about Venus before there were talks about Mars, but right now we have to strip ourselves of the notions of Mars, um, especially these notions that were slavery infused. Okay, so the actual going to Mars would necessitate a deep, strong Venusian, and um, and Uranus is about liberation from Okay, so it's liberation from slavery. So it's also about industrialization. It's also about the duality. It's also about the devil's advocate. It's also about many things. Um, but the general, even if we take it outside of like United States, Israel, or very likely more countries, it's just the first episode on the topic. It's a humanity level question, and even the person that we're seeing doing the pilgrimage to Mars is having his Mars Rahu in the sign of space from the vantage point of Earth, which is Aquarius, that is Saturn ruled, and Saturn dot rules slavery, and that person even is a slave. Okay, was born into these inbred cults. Um, Managed to improve his situation as a breeder, and have a relatively small amount of children to breeders that we see, like was that CEO of Telegram that had 100. They are breeders, so you want to learn about satanic ritual abuse from survivors, and listen to Annika Lucas and other survivors to talk about this, and that would give you bigger context so that you don't dehumanize, because you don't perpetuate basically the harm. So we don't dehumanize, but we also do not swipe it under the rug, because that is something that we would need to liberate ourselves from as humanity. And again, here Uranus transit happens with Pluto in Aquarius, which is about purging all cults. Aquarius is the comuna. It's when we had the kibbutz. It's when we had the type of communal living. And again, you want to learn about people that lived in communities, and you want to learn which communities were successful, which not. And communities usually more successful were united around an idea, but they have to have a certain sovereignty. And you always run the risk of becoming a cult. And if a person changes their idea, they basically are outcast from the community. Okay, so this is something that humanity will have to tackle. There's a lot of ideation again around tribalism, but fortunately there are the kind of reality checkers, that the people that still live, that tell us the stories of the lineages, and they say with the closest that we were, okay, we talk about indigenous societies, the closest that we were as tribal society is gang wars. And this needs to be said as a person that lives in Negev area of Israel, where we have a lot of tribes, Bedouin tribes. This is true. They run away to the city as fast as they can, and then how did they do that? They go to the army, and then they get the grant, and then they study. And so you can either be a doctor, engineer, or you can be a lawyer, and so, or social worker. Okay, so something that you will have job, and then you have the court, which can't do anything, because the basically, not only we talking about children, because it's Boko Haram like type of child trade that's going on, but even if you pass this, it's basically how will you send the members of your tribe, how do you cause tribal war over a jail system, um, and that makes it very challenging for Bedouin society to have um, good life. I'm not even talking about law and order. I'm just talking about the good life. They try to run away into the city, and they don't manage with this culture, and having Hamula wars every now and then. Um, it's still problematic. There's still the sadness stories that we had since Inuit of burying women that don't want to marry in the sands. This is not a viable way of living, okay? Let's just put it that way. And you can't blame the desert, because Inuits were not living in the desert. And most tribes in the United States, they were not what we now call United States, were not living in the desert. So it's not just all the climate. The climate is very important, but it's not just the climate. And that's something we are definitely going to be bringing into light with this Uranus in Gemini trining Pluto in Aquarius, that is purging of the cults. So we're going to be exploring a lot. Okay, if Uranus Taurus was like, get out of the cities, da 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 da, then comes August and you're like, I want to take the bus because there is air condition and I'm going to spend all day at the mall because there is air condition. Then I'm going to go back to my tomato land and it's all dry right now because it's summer and I can't work the land because I want to live. And the soil need to rest and I need to rest, and it's so good that I can take the bus to the city and sit at the mall all day and then go back in the evening where I can take a walk and sleep as much as the sun allows until the next day, until the summer is over and it's autumn again. So the city and the village were being reconsidered. Even just the move for Jupiter into Gemini was already reminding us, hey, there are fantastic things about living in the city. Okay, you can go, you can walk by foot to the market, to the this. Okay, so all these things that we were rightfully rejecting, but we are also reminded that when you're old, that when it's difficult to walk, that when it's hot as F temperature, you want to take a bus or you want to take a car and put on the AC and go to some place where you put on the AC before, but you also want to go back to your land and to dig up half moon holes that look like alien invasion, but less perfect shape in your backyard, and have all the neighbors wondering who did you bury, and see if it's going to become forest like Sahara. Okay, because this gives you a sense of meaning and purpose to life, for to try something new and innovate and bring in things that you would travel to see, and it gives you life. So you need that and that. Um, when it comes to the question of slavery, I think that the Civil War is really going to be around which type of people have been working their lands the way, or building their houses the way industrial revolution, okay, the Ford method, whereas which type of people have been dedicating the time to actually learn about how to do it. I'm sorry. Okay. Because it takes time. If it takes knowing a little bit about astrology, knowing a little bit about the cycles of the moon, knowing what election is good to plant, because you think, oh, I planted with the growing moon, the first crescent moon, nothing grew. Yes, because the first crescent moon was void of course, and it was in Aries, so this is not, this is okay, so try next time. Okay, I was like, yes, you were planting on the solar eclipse. What did you expect? Okay. And so there are many things. And for these many things, you really need to have a grocery store where you buy some veggies in the meantime. Okay. But it does tend to work in a weird way where you find food, or kind of like I would find potatoes. I would get to restaurants in the mall where people just finished eating and they left potatoes, and I'm like, that's the most tasty thing of the meal. like actual potatoes, not even chips, okay, not even French fries or free fries or whatever you call them, okay, patat, whatever. But potatoes, okay, they're kind of like the McDonald's potatoes thingy, like with the spices and all. I was like, that's the most tasty thing. How come I found someone that left it and for me and then didn't touch it even, so I can just celebrate? And I was like, yeah, because I grow potatoes. And even if nothing grew, the very fact that I tended to grow them, so the food that I would find as leftover food would be for these potatoes when I don't even have the money to buy myself a decent meal. I'm like, wow, that works the Uranian way. Okay? And so, and by the way, talismans are a great way to find food. Astrological talismans. Like when inflation do magic. Um, because you tend to the essence of wealth and how the energy moves and the resources move. So when money begins to change hands, you tend to that as well. With Gemini, it's really weird, okay? This is where we use a cell phone, very likely made by child labor, to talk about satanic ritual abuse, child trade, the banking system, expandable children, and so on and so forth. So, but it moves quicker, okay? It's not Taurus. Taurus is moving, okay? It's the half moon. That's it. With the cycle of Venus, the star of Venus, it's an 8-year cycle for Venus. Whereas the moon is very fast moving, but the Mercury for Gemini, okay, is faster moving than Venus, even. So, and it's not an earth sign, it's an air sign. Um, and even in that, not only that, Gemini is when you fumble with ideas, it's where you experiment. So people are going to rebel and ask themselves, okay, what happened if we abolished slavery? What would happen if you abolish slavery? Okay, we must try this. What happens if we abolish satanic ritual abuse? Okay, when Saturn ingressed to Gemini, and I learned about satanic ritual abuse, and I learned it's not like Boko Haram. It's not just like the Jews or the Zionists. It's like this is the leaders of Europe that are being in risk of assassination because they even as a joke put out that another religion is not wanted because of the way they treat children and women. Um, okay, and so all the while they themselves participated in these death camps. Participated. It's not like there was willing consent there. That there's this very like the Holocaust. Okay, it's horrid things that happened there. So as said, I ingressed. I was like, hey, we never tried abolishing these death camps before. So some of it because we didn't know that exists. We never tried not killing women that don't want to marry in tribal societies. We never tried doing economy without satanic ritual abuse and extortion through snuff films. That never been done before. You say, but surely you're a filmmaking student. They only invented film that, yeah, but that it was a ritual that they would do. And the ritualistic thing lasted, and then give me the head of Medusa. I will give you the head of this. I will give you the head. That's how they did that. And it's they still do it. Okay, it's just now they add film because you have to document everything for the bureaucracy. You can extort people, and that's how you have the trust, which you put your assets through so that they will tax evade and make sure that these assets are saved, are inflation proof, so that your children will have housing. That's basically why you put the money on the trust. Okay, you don't touch it yourself when you are alive so much. That's just the duality of Gemini. Because Gemini is going to ask us, what happened if we removed that? What if we changed that? We tweaked around that? And there's going to be a conflict. Or some people say, if they asked that when Uranus was still in Aries, they asked this about prostitution. I guess because it was the Libra Aries axis, and say, oh, well, what if we did not allow for prostitution, but we look at the client side, okay? If not to criminalize the prostitute, for the client side. And then people say, but we tried that. But the other people say, well, we have to. And then the arguments, but the prostitution is as ancient as antiquity. Okay, and it was like, yeah, but we're not in antiquity. Like, we need to make some progress, otherwise we go extinct. And it's the same thing as about infanticide. Okay, you say, well, people have been sacrificing children since, forever, since the Inuit. So some people are going to say that. It's like slavery, there's always been slavery, will always be slavery. And some people are like, well, but it's always causing the same results, and it's insanity to do the same thing and expect a different result. So humanity is going to go extinct, and then it's not going to go to Mars, it's just going to go extinct. Okay, and transhumanism will have the frequency equivalence of inflammation, because it needs to be tempered with the elements. Okay, alchemy doesn't completely disappear as we turn intergalactic. It's just the different things that make life, and there's adjustment and so on. But the element, the core issue, is still there. And we need to remember that the Uranus Taurus is coming before the Uranus Gemini for a reason, because before we go on air, we ground ourselves. And so many people talk about grounding and balancing the nervous system through stepping on the soil with Uranus Taurus. And indeed, I found that the more I work the land, the more I fly. Okay, I find myself at the airport every time I work the land, and I find myself, okay, I was saying on air, but definitely at the airport, definitely somewhere else. Okay, I was told that I was, in Hebrew the word is meofefet, which means flying. It's kind of like astronaut. And I do have Chiron in the fourth. Most people that are astronauts have that. So I don't know. But there's just something about the Uranus Taurus where you're changing up the soil. We make a revolution in the soil, you liberate the soil itself, and then you find yourself on air. And then there's the duality between people. So that sounds really lofty and detached, but we do know that the civil war on slavery in the United States was quite a significant one. Okay, it's not, they didn't throw flowers at each other. Okay, so, and that's something to keep in mind. And so that is something that we will see on a humanity level, especially when we're like, oh, should we go to Venus? Should we go to Mars? How will we fund that? And all these things that are going on around, okay, how will we fund that? How will we this? How will we that? And there is also the revolution of what is and what isn't Venus, Mars, but in this case, Mercury. What is and what isn't Mercury. And we might even start hearing about, Uranus, Gemini, so we might even start hearing about it. Why won't we live on Mercury? Could we have life on Mercury? We might begin to explore that. Okay, what would life on Mercury be like? So all these, actually I have Rahu in Gemini. So I wasn't thinking about it because the things that can give you outer space, both Chiron and the fourth, because it's like your home needs healing, and you're the wounded healer of homes. So something with housing, upbringing, motherland, ancestry, but it can also be giving something like space, especially if you have like the ruler in the 12th or something like that. But it's also where you have Rahu and another planet with in Aquarius, kind of like the Rahu Mars of Elon Musk, is giving Mars. Rahu Venus, for example, in Aquarius could be giving Venus. And then it's the question of where your Rahu at. Then that, if that is compatible with the houses, you could be looking for life there. Okay, when you go intergalactic. For me, I have Rahu in Mercury, but Mercury is actually in Mars sign, with Mars in Scorpio, but my Uranus is in Sag. So, and the 12th house would be Aquarius, where the ruler Saturn is in Scorpio, which is again Mars sign. So I don't know, because maybe I would be living, and not only that, that means that Aries is the ruler of the 14 Aries. I constantly live in something that is new, innovation, innovate around the house, and it's going to be technology. So it's like it's not impossible that I will somehow end up living in Mars. So that is more of what we'll see. I don't think the Mars line would necessarily come up for everyone. Um, uh, but definitely the space, the living in space, and that is just going to be kind of like the civil war in United States, but on other planets. Which is, and then you have to hold the dualities, because of one duality we see that with Neptune in Pisces, is that, hey, that NASA is making a Hollywood film, and we think we gotten all the way to space, and on the other hand we definitely do have technologies that the world is not aware of, and that's how MK Ultra operates. Okay, so it's the duality of like, hey, we haven't actually done that, and we have done so many things, okay, that you don't know about, that we don't, that I don't know about, um, and the people that deal with that or are exposed to that, they're living in completely, there's an existential gap between the life that these people are living and the life that those people are living. So we're expected to tend to this gap. Okay, civil war is when we tend to this gap. And remind you that the sides that won was the side that said, well, at least in here, we don't do that. Okay? Now, what would happen if China, let's say, would say, we don't do slavery? But they would have to say it internally. Okay? So we don't treat our people this way here. This is what Nelson Mandela did. The closest to doing that we know of is Nelson Mandela. And he was controversial in his own people. Okay? So, as per United States, the odds are the odds. Okay, let children have childhood and they will have childhood. Have Mormon marriages within your Masonic cults in the Church of Satan in the Vatican. And if that sounds like, Shelley, if that sounds like false stuff to you, it's not. This is the reality. The declaration, I said a sentence which truth value is one. And it sounds like false stuff because that's the gaslighting that people grow into. We listen to survivors. It's all comprised of the testimonials of survivors. Okay? And if United States keeps going for this path, and you can't blame Trump, because Trump is what they used to call hyoka. He is embodying satire. And if you have a philosophical question of what if the townsfool was the chief of the tribe, then this is one example where we explore this possibility that the townsfool, the hyoka, the sacred clown, was the chief of the town. And you tell me, Shirley, have you gone crazy? There's nothing sacred clown about Trump. And I said, look again. Orange Jesus. I'm a businessman, so there is always going to be blackmail. At least you know that the money is with me. It's not. The money is lying in the trust, which is why you have pictures with Epstein. Whether you're a pedo or not, because if you couldn't be extorted, you couldn't be trusted. Okay? And so there you have a person that is very competent in doing what he came here to do, which is being that townsfool that's running for president, was the president, and might be the president again. And is giving us all of the things that the people are aspiring to. How many people in America asking, what if we had some guy that would just fix everything, okay? We say, hey, Kim Jong-un, he misses me. He missed me when I'm gone. Okay? And he's delivering. He's over-delivering. Then what do you do with this character? Is you don't blame things on the townsfool. You have to respond to the reflection and have sovereignty. Say, yes, there's a part in me that really want you to say, that really want to have somebody says, oh yeah, Kim Jong-un, he misses me when I'm gone. I'm going to make this okay. It's no problem. I'm going to stop the war. I'm going to make a local produce. This is death camps in Hippie, Oregon, for the homeless. America, not just the indigenous, okay? And I'm going to say the indigenous, they're illegal, they're immigrants. It's a satire, it's a walking satire, but it's a sacred satire that's meant to enlighten people and say, hey, we don't do so and so. We have the desire, we have the wish, we have the longing. We're gonna be okay human beings, and we're gonna have this reality check, and we're gonna understand that there's just things that we need to do differently, and it's not about voting for Harris or voting for Trump or voting for Elon, because he's been practicing being a head of state. Okay, if he's going to have a colony on Mars, then he's practicing. You got to practice somewhere how to lead a country. So, closest example is Trump. But that pertains to genuinely addressing the topics at hand, and it's not an easy task, because all we've known was death cults on death cults on death cults that later either cry colonialism or join in the bunch that pretends to be enlightened but is just death cults and gang wars. That's a lot of the history of humanity. If we assess it at that level, it's a lot of the history of humanity is fighting with each other like crazy animals and have entire nature wondering what the fuck did we do wrong. We know how to make fire, it's true. But that's pretty much all we do since we came here. But then, and look at the a nice housing in New Zealand that was built by an architect, and he said, "I built this house with the notion that we have locally that we are the children of the earth and the children of the sky and the God of the sky and the God of the earth, and we are wanted here and we are desired here." And yes, when you look at this one building, sits in the middle of nature, and even concrete, they made later they would make a bunker house in Denmark, and and it looks fantastic. You'd probably be bored and ask when we go to the mall when you left the city and live off grid and so on. But you you also have to admit that that looks like, yeah, that's convincing. We are desired here. We're not an annoyance. Yet that being said, if you take a look at how communities, you ask yourself, okay, what petering did this person have to be a member of in order to get the funding to do the project, to have somebody to buy the house and so on. So that's a question we ask as filmmakers, where the money comes from to make all these dreams come true. And what film can you sell is part of the creative projects. Engineers ask that, but also doctors and medical developers ask that, and weapon developers ask that. Um, and we need for that thing to work with you. But for sure, if we are sacrificing children and ritually abusing and the people, for sure, that's probably not the best course of action to go about it. Okay, it's also important to note that we've never done anything differently of history that we know of, and the people that did are not here with us to tell. So that's it's kind of uh, okay. It's kind of something that to keep in mind. Um, and as a person that tended to that around my Pluto square, and I'm in my Pluto square, it's still my Pluto square. Um, this is fucking overwhelming. It's overwhelming. The whole to hold so many things at once is overwhelming. Um, because you know that these people were born in that camp, so they're like Holocaust survivors, but they're also not out of the cold. That means that many of them, if not all, have to still rape children, whether they're pedophiles or not. They need to have it on tape, or they die. And then for the job is to make this that calls for everyone to suffer like this, and then to bridge the gap. If such person comes out and you ask a billion questions about the human nature, and the recovery is also associated right now with this. Okay, it's kind of like live in a whole new world, building a whole new world from the core. Um, and then the fact that it's just this is a person, it's like it's a human, and that could happen to any person. Um, and if you don't tend to that, you know, that they just keep on expanding that, whether they want to or not. And when you do tend to that, it is overwhelming. And that's the Ubermensch, that's the superhuman for you, that's the enlightenment, that's the Freemason folks, where all the cool people were. Okay, every person that you listen to, whether it's a musician, scientist, politician, a leader, a guru, I don't know, an innovator, business person, okay, they were all in it. So all your inspirations were all in it. We really don't know something that's outside of the cult. And what we do know is what inspired the worst practices of the cult, as well as the best. That's the tribal societies, which are the testimonials of the people who lived as tribal societies. They say the closest thing to what you would modernly know as what we were is gang wars. That's basically what it was. And I can attest, as persons living in the Negev area of Israel, that that's true. So much so that I asked a Bedouin man myself. He says he's running from the village. He's running from their city, the back to the city. And I said, for all this crime, maybe it's some infiltration of your villages. And he said, I have to tell you the truth. No, it's the women and children. All the fights over the women and children. And I know the code, okay? They murder the women that don't agree to marry, and the children is, yes. So, then, by the way, people talk about Sharia law. According to Sharia law, if man was murdering a woman from, I think, another tribe, yes, if a man was murdering a woman, is allowed to murder 4 men. I'm not saying it's good. It's not feminism, but this is also Sharia law, okay? So how is it practiced? Oh, well, how is the law הבדל דת מגדר, גזע ומין, okay? For the no difference between religion, gender, sex, and race applied in the state of Israel. So, not really. Israel won't be able to swipe it under the rug. By the way, one of the main mottos of the people who are protesting in Israel is loyal to the Declaration of Independence. Okay? But they're Masons, so which is code name for it's the same gang wars, but we dress in nice suits and we have some dining etiquette when we cannibalize. That's the culture. So I guess that's the spirit of the times. Gemini is my 4th house. I don't I don't know what. I mean, my house is full of talismans. This is giving Uranus. Okay, when in doubt, do magic. And doing astrology is a great remedy. Astrology is a great remedy because you turn the Uranus energy to astrology and not to just running rampant. But Uranus is Uranus, and Gemini is Gemini, and conflict is conflict. And we're gonna go through that. It also means that we're gonna have Uranus on Aldebaran. It starts with Uranus on Sedna, then we're gonna have Uranus on Aldebaran. And so and the bisextile is both protective. It's protective. It's a triangle shape, which is very protective. It's protective. What we have to understand is what is it that we want to protect. You have to set intention. You'll be protected, but you have to tap into it because it's protective. It's protective as a quality, okay? And look at my Hassan Nasrallah natal chart analysis that I did in Ben Gurion Airport to learn about this. Okay, he has the bisexuality. That means he's protected from assassination, quite protected. Okay, which is good, it's bad, but it's protective. So we have to understand that a lot of streams are going to apply this protected type of thing, and you have the sovereignty tap into this bisextile as well, so you're protected. And that is kind of, yes, what I have to say. So we've seen that previous times when we tended to abolishing slavery, we have basically we did transfer to slavery, we didn't actually abolish it. That being said, you like the side that was the slaveholder in the war lost. Okay, and you must understand there was a Uranus on Aldebaran going in the midst of that, so there was a fight on land. So Archangel Michael does have merit to it. Okay. And that's another thing you can tap into. Is when you have to be victorious for that to be here with the virtue of alignment. And you see that this has, even in Masonic society, more force than slavery and Satan. Said slavery is Satan. I cannot deny this. We haven't completely abolished slavery. We must admit that the side that was against slavery won the land by the merit of being against the slavery. That we have a legal document in the state of Israel, it's the Declaration of Independence, to which people can hone in and say we are loyal to the Declaration of Independence. We don't have a constitution. That's that Mercury on Aldebaran with Archangel Michael, which is known also to Judaism. We have good potency to abolish satanic ritual abuse of children, kidnapping of children in the state of Israel. There's going to be civil war around this. Okay? And this is Baden Declaration of Independence of the United States. Here we're talking about equity of sex, gender, race, land of origin, and religion. That's the basis of Israel. Those who are going to try to take it to Yamei Anu Banu, this is not the spirit of the times for that. Good morning, Israel. In God we trust, absolutely. So you have to see, after all these Masonic people, they were also not stupid. And this line stands for you legally. Not just in the court of law, but in the court of God. Okay, if you apply, even if you're possibly an atheist, even if you're atheist, okay, say, I do not consent. Because when a law is legal, it applies. This is illegal. This is a legal thing. Equity between sex, gender, race, religion amongst humans, legal. There's nothing that contradicts any law. And if you try to make for religion where it contradicts your law, you still are operating within the cosmic law. That applies to all things. Or the elements. And again, listen to satanic ritual abuse survivors. If you think about it from atheistic point of view, when you are acting, okay, like a decent fucking human being, you have more conviction than person that needs to invest energy in putting on masquerade of decent human being. You have to invest less energy into being you than they. So in terms of economicity of energy, or the art of war, your economicity of energy is better, even if you have lower chi. All things stand in your favor, in the spirit and in matter and in practice. Even when you do wrong, when you this, when you that, you align yourself, and when you're afraid, you find yourself, you speak. Otherwise, you go, or you do what you have to do. All the things stand in your favor, not in your detriment. And I want us to end on this note. Yes, we haven't completely abolished slavery. We haven't this, but all of this is true. And a free man, a free woman, a free person need not oppress another. It means that to be free, you don't even feel the need to oppress another. How do you get to the situation you understand and you observe for the cosmic law, and you see that when I am me, when I am, I have to put this much energy to be something that I'm not. I do not consent for anything to try to make of me something I am not. But I am. That's why they say the power of know thyself, okay? When I am, and I live and let live, this is the Aries raison état, okay? It's not that I made the video yesterday, it's not that I'm stupid, I don't know that Andromeda also associated with torturers and this, all is true. But when you put the I am in a very economicity level, when I am myself, then on Aries raison état, okay, which Neptune is going to be at, I don't have to invest a lot of energy because I am myself. And I stand in conviction. As long as I live and let live, as long as I do not seek to oppress another. And when I am myself, I don't even feel the need to oppress another, okay? The basis of how you know you reached yourself, where you don't even feel the need to oppress another. It's a good marker. You're free. Okay? It's not about what can I get away with, because that means that the rules pertained on me from society are not true to me. No, but when I am myself, I don't even feel the need to oppress another. It means that I am me, not the traumas that the death cults try to perpetuate on me. But I am myself. And that you stand with the power of conviction. And with that, the assertion of the I am stronger than assertion of that which invests a lot of energy and is inauthentic. In essence, a lot of, I cannot say for the whole, but a lot of what we call evil is inauthentic. A lot of what we call evil is inauthentic to the self, because authentic self, that which was not trauma inflicted, tortured, electrocuted, or raped, and so on, The authentic self is the I am. If I hurt you, it's probably because I didn't know that you were hurt by this. You tell me I am hurt by this, okay, and it's not about you wear this dress, it makes me hurt. Okay, go to the bathroom, fix it. I don't know. Okay. That's a TMI there. It's okay as long as we respect each other boundaries, okay? But with Aries, if Aries hurt, it's probably they didn't mean that. And you said that this is me, this is the I, this is where I and the you begin, and say, okay, yes, sorry. And there is the tolerance of the nuances of that. And this is important. It's only when there is investment of energy to be something you're not, when people begin to run into all types of questions around evil. So, for the question of slavery, it's not about you enslaved us, now we are enslaving you. This is payback, this is karma, this is this. Underneath the vengeance, there is a desire for change. Change is not the flipping of the flipping of the sides of who is abused, who is abusive. Change is the freedom that you don't even feel a need to abuse another. Okay? Which basically is a side effect of being yourself. And then the point of interference is a claiming of the self. The know thyself and the claiming of the self. Okay? So, and it's also true that we have environment and change and so on. So this is, of course, has intricacy and so on. But that's something that I want you to take away with this note, because yes, slavery has been around. As African people sometimes say, here and there, they say, yes, the white people, they did not invent slavery, but they abolished it. And not really, they allocated it to China and to Africa, but this is also the notion that at the conviction, at the war, at the conflict between that which is satanic in the sense, and I don't mean the Satan. There are people who worship Satan and say Satan is karma, Satan that you murder rapists because they're really. I'm not talking about bringing change through bringing justice, okay, or break through the catch-22 through bringing justice, okay. I'm talking about satanic ritual abuse, okay, that type of satanic. And that which is satanic, because they have to invest so much energy, that is essentially inauthentic, okay? They have to force it. It's not some person, and even with the people that say, I wanted this, I wanted that, you look at the chart, you look at this, there can be trauma of rejected at birth, there can be trauma of sexual abuse in childhood, there can be trauma. A person might not even recall, and they try to get at the essence of desire, but they don't know themselves without the abuse, and that can create, yes, for sadism, for this, for that, absolutely. But the essence of desire for the authentic self is without the trauma. The authentic self, when you grow with love, that's the essence of desires. When you say, I am, I want. And this is something to keep in mind. When you are getting the essence of the are your authentic self, you stand in conviction more so than people that are the inauthentic self stand in conviction. It's not because they're wrong, it's because you bring this is true enlightenment. Okay, if you talk about the Lucifer as the light bringer, is the true enlightenment is actually Archangel Michael in that sense. Okay, you bring in that stand in your conviction. Well, I do not consent. Well, you're privileged, you're this, you're that, you're that, you're that. Well, I hold this light, because if I succumb to your saying that to say yes, no, maybe is privilege, we don't get out of the situation where I am is privileged. I do not consent to perpetuating the abuse. Now we need a breakthrough. Now we need innovation, okay? How will we do economy? How without saying, oh, but this person, I have movie of this person, of my colleagues, my this, my that, in the parliament, in the this, in the that, with the Kamer, for every parliament, okay? Or in my job, in my corporation, it's the same, office politics. And often people go to politics because essentially they find out that you're gonna have to do it, so you just do it. You just do it to the parliament, you have to do it, okay? And it is the same politics. I have snuff film of all of these people and all these judges. I know that they'll do we will come to agreement. Yes, they also have a snuff film of you if you participate in this type of economy. And for most people, when they're born into that, that's what is the situation. So how do you do politics? How do you come to agreements? How do you ensure agreements without having snuff film of each other? Because that's something that we never tried before in modern times, at least since the history of filmmaking, which is which dated way back to what we know as modern film. Is the thing about technology. Okay, we may have not been to the moon, but we also have been to the entire galaxy. We don't know it, and we don't know it. Okay. And the key to that is with the Gemini is Aldebaran, and what we now call Archangel Michael, whichever form you have of divinity, that is the victory of the authentic self, where you don't even feel the need to oppress another. This is why Aldebaran in this form is true wealth, but in forms that are not this form, it's called Pyrrhus win. Like you won the battle, but you lost the war. Okay, or worse off, you won the war, but the win is a Pyrrhus win. Okay, if you lost so much that you ask yourself, of what is this for? And this is very important questions to ask with Aldebaran. So yes, we're going to be discussing exactly the questions of slavery again. And we're going to be asking them intergalactically. Meanwhile, countries that immediately pop to mind is, of course, United States, but also State of Israel. they're going to be, and with state of Israel, it's quite global, and with the merit that this is in the 9th house. The question of slavery is going to go all the way to religion, okay? So, and already we have a lot of criticism about Israel. It's like, hey, these people, these Jews people, they believe that they are chosen people and all the rest are slaves, okay? This belief dates back to very likely all tribal societies. That's what enabled slavery since the beginning. That's what enabled tribal war, a lot of the tribal wars since the beginning. In Germanic tribes, there were, okay, slave woman was equal in rights to a free man in some tribes, okay? So the question of how do we equate rights and how do we treat gender and how do we deal with the notion of slavery, as well as the notion of warriors, as well as the notion of equity, okay, that's been there all throughout time, and humanity has dealt with that all throughout time, but it has been 12 millennia since we've done that with Sedna and Gemini. And how do we revere Sedna the best? We abolish for incest, we abolish for infanticide, we abolish for child trafficking, and we have a free woman within relationship, which also means a free man within relationship. Okay, free, because a free man, a free woman, means that you don't even feel the need to oppress another. So yes, with that I'll end.